In front of Chicago doors. He gets free once you still get.
By now, you've heard of the tragedy of the young couple who were about to be engaged coming out of the Jewish Museum in Washington, and they were gunned down viciously by a supposed pro-Palestinian terrorist. This is a tragedy beyond all words, but to me, it brings up a bigger topic, which is the topic of religion. Now, I've talked a bit about religion in the past. I'm trying not to repeat myself. However, this tragedy made something inside of me want to talk about how much I really hate Mideast politics.
But it was the rising tension in Palestine that held world attention. Partition had brought a new flare-up in the strife between Arab and Jew. Politically, the conflict appeared to be settled. In actual fact, it had only just begun. The United Nations Special Committee had advocated separate Jewish and Arab states as the uneasy compromise. The plan was accepted by 33 votes to 13. Alexander Cadogan, Britain's representative, abstained. Prince Faisal of Saudi Arabia headed the Arab country's opposition. The Jewish state will include the ports of Haifa and Tel Aviv and the whole of the Negev Valley. The Arab will occupy the fertile eastern part. Jerusalem will come under United Nations trusteeship. First reaction from the Jews was one of joy. Crowds gathered in the streets and greeted the birth of their state with traditional dances. Britain's civic administration is expected to withdraw by May. Jews and Arabs will then govern themselves. Arab opposition to the partition scheme has been violent. The call for a holy war against the Jews went out from Cairo. A three-day general strike coincided with an intensive recruiting campaign. As in India, transfer of power in Palestine will bring bloodshed. Two states have been born. For the Holy Land, the immediate future would not bring peace.
And the reason I hate it is because it's just soaked in blood. Okay, these are centuries old conflicts, but to me it has always boiled down to my God is better than your God. Okay, my God is the true God. And if you look at the centuries of violence, not just in the Middle East, around the world, that have centered on religion and all the violence committed in the name of religion, it's just unfathomable that religions are supposed to be, or purported to be, harbingers of peace and love, can cause so much destruction that's just unimaginable. Now, this young couple were just in an event, minding their own business, and some crackpot comes out of the woods, pacing up and down. That to me is the first thing. Like, if you notice somebody's pacing up and down in front of the Jewish Museum in Washington, isn't that a bit of a red flag? Shouldn't somebody have gone out there and maybe interviewed this guy? Or to give you an illustration of the good parts of religion, after the ruckus went down a little bit, the people in the museum actually took this guy in. And, they were kind to the stranger. They were practicing the good, what I would call the good part of their religious belief. And then when the police came, he started shouting about Palestine, and he was arrested, and these people were horrified that they had the killer in their midst. I think we need to look at what religion does to people and how it incites violence in people based on the tenets of the religion rather than the deeper, more devoted part of religions, in which, let's start with Christianity, because I'm a fallen away Catholic and it's the one that is most familiar to me. Now, the corporal works of mercy are something that the Catholic Church talks about a lot. In other words, feed the hungry, visit the imprisoned, take care of the sick. There's 4 or 5 others. But that's one of the reasons I call myself a Christian with a small c, because I believe in those principles of living. Do I manage to adhere to them all the time? No, I don't. Nobody does. We're humans. To err is human, to forgive is divine, so they say. But people use these tenets of religion to commit atrocities, and they miss the bigger picture. And I think it comes from a sense of wanting to belong somewhere. There's an epidemic of loneliness in this country. I was just watching a YouTube video the other day in which they were discussing that how people in this country are unhappy, and the reference point was 1998, and our level of happiness has gone down tremendously since then. And what happened in 1998? Well, the invention of the cell phone and the mass proliferation of the cell phone. And there are 4 pillars that this particular gentleman was talking about. For my purposes, the one that he highlighted for me was the fact that years ago, 80% of the people in 98 were members of organized religion, and that was a way to dissipate loneliness.
Everybody feels lonely from time to time. When we have no one to sit next to at lunch, when we move to a new city, or when nobody has time for us at the weekend. But over the last few decades, this occasional feeling has become chronic for millions. In the UK, 60% of 18 to 34-year-olds say they often feel lonely. In the US, 46% of the entire population feel lonely regularly. We are living in the most connected time in human history, and yet an unprecedented number of us feel isolated. Being lonely and being alone are not the same thing. You can be filled with bliss by yourself and hate every second surrounded by friends. Loneliness is a purely subjective, individual experience. If you feel lonely, you are lonely. A common stereotype is that loneliness only happens to people who don't know how to talk to people or how to behave around others. But population-based studies have shown that social skills make practically no difference for adults when it comes to social connections. Loneliness can affect everybody. Money, fame, power, beauty, social skills, a great personality. Nothing can protect you against loneliness because it's part of your biology.
And in the ensuing period, we have less and less practice of organized religion, which I have always kind of viewed as a good thing. But I understand the gentleman's point in that what we have is a collection of individuals rather than a collection of groups in this country anymore. And the one group that's left out there that people can identify with is politics, because politics has become the new religion. If you look at the political arguments that we're having today, they're the same arguments that have plagued people for centuries about religion. You know, and my policies are better than your policies. My political party is better than your political party. Well, it used to be my theory of religion is better than yours. My God is better than yours. And just to get back to the original point here of that tragic young couple being gunned down, they were gunned down in the name of a religious belief, and people have been gunned down in the names of political belief. But what is the root cause of all this? It is the fact that people are lonely. They do not identify with other groups that are positive in their life. What I'm tired of is people using religion as a weapon, because we now are also using politics as a weapon, and they're both destructive. I believe that people should have the right to believe in any religion they want. Whatever the tenets of the religion are, it's fine to believe in them. I just don't want them codified into law that I have to follow religious beliefs because they've become part of law. Now, there are beliefs that are reflected in the law. I get that. However, what we need to do is to have people stop imposing their religious beliefs on other people and saying that their religion is better than other people's religions. And most importantly, we have to come to grips with the fact that if you have freedom of religion, I get to have freedom from religion. And I know I will fight to the end for your right to believe what you want. But would you fight for my right to not believe what I want? And that's Alan talking in this segment.
In front of Chicago children, you much is still just, you had me on the dude next the whole time, all the time. And then when he stopped breathing, he wasn't resisting the rest of nothing. He was on, and pretty much a stupid dude.